Alien Syndrome was developed by Sega for arcades in 1987 and was ported around to home consoles in 1989 when it wound up on our beloved NES. Thanks to Tengen handling the publishing, we got to play a Sega-developed game published by an Atari subsidiary on a Nintendo platform. I brought this up before in my Shinobi review, and I'll do it again for the other two games that do that too. Look forward to it. Fantasy Zone and Afterburner, FYI. Outside of sounding like a diagnosis for expecting too much out of Ridley Scott, Alien Syndrome was pretty popular in arcades largely because it appears as a lighthearted take on the Alien franchise in terms of setting, and it has a great use of sound effects. It also doesn't hurt that, especially on the home ports, the hostages you're rescuing look like tiny Ellen Ripley's, Alien's main protagonist. So, does the NES port hold a flame to the arcade original? Well, let's see what's up. One or two players can set off in the space adventure and even play simultaneously on screen. You can choose between two characters, a guy and gal, and out the gate you're presented with a pseudo top-down view of your character on an alien spaceship. The story is simple. You're tasked with marching around the ship and rescuing 12 stranded hostages by simply running into them all Zombies Ate My Neighbor style. All of the hostages look the exact same, a slightly Ellen Ripley-looking sprite waving joyfully for you to come save them, all while aliens lurk around trying to rip their brains out of their skulls. Why are there so many hostages on several different alien spaceships? Probably poor planning, but thankfully, you're here to save the day. You're equipped with a basic weapon in this run-and-gun shooter. Peppering enemies with a few shots is usually all it takes to dispatch them. But seen hanging around on the walls, you can grab other weapons denoted by letter abbreviations. Not unlike Contra, you can find FB for a fireball shooter, an L for a laser cannon, and an F for an effing flamethrower. Each has their own special use case, but I got the most miles out of that fireball shooter. You'll also see a W on occasion, which is a warp that shoots you to another part of the map, and you'll sometimes see question marks, which I have been mentally trained to avoid in games for fear that they could be either power-ups or power-downs. But in Alien Syndrome, it's always bonus points. You just don't know how many. The game is hampered by slowdown and lots of screen flicker. The colors are ugly, especially compared to the arcade version, and the levels appear drab and uninteresting as a result. And because the maps look so samey, the maps you find hanging on the wall are quite a bit helpful and show the hostages you have left to rescue and where they're located. The game does have 8 directional shooting, but you can only shoot diagonally if you're moving in that direction, which makes total sense given the controller, and movement and hit detection feels pretty good, making this one very fun to play. It's not exactly easy, but it can feel satisfying and is fun. Enemies respawn constantly, but that works for this formula. In total, there are 7 levels, or alien ships, and each ship has 12 hostages scattered about. Each ship has a different layout and tougher enemies as you go. After you rescue all the hostages, a door opens and you jump headfirst into a classic NES boss battle where you fight a floating entity on a black background. They're all unique, but the formula for success is consistent. Dodge their attacks and dish out ones of your own. This is easier said than done though, and the boss fights end up being the toughest parts of the game and where players are likely to find themselves stuck at some point. Being sure to have the right weapon handy when heading into the boss fight is important. You have 4 lives and you can get an extra for every 100,000 points you accrue. Bad news, no continues. Also, each level is timed. It's rarely an issue, but it helps add tension if you're not being efficient at finding those hostages. All said, this game is pretty dang fun. It sacrifices some things in the graphics and sound department compared to the arcade version, and it can get repetitive and boring after a while, admittedly, but with the 2-player co-op, you can get many more miles out of it. If you want more Alien Syndrome, there was a sequel with the same title released on the Sony PSP and Nintendo Wii way back in 2007. I've not played it much, but it maintains the top-down view. However, the game's objectives include more than just running around and finding hostages who refuse to do anything to help themselves, like in the classic versions. Well, that's going to do it for Alien Syndrome on the NES. As always, if you're a hostage in an alien spaceship hoping for rescue, just stand in the middle of the room and wave frantically. And thanks for watching.